Hey, wealthy women, I have a confession to make. For the next 2 weeks, you are going to be watching a seminar that I did because I'm trying to get ahead on my episodes so that I won't have to worry about missing any while I'm floating around the Greek islands to celebrate my 60th birthday. I've never been on a cruise before. I've never been to the Greek islands or Malta before. I have been to Rome, which is where we leave from, and Barcelona, where we're going to, but it doesn't matter because it's going to be awesome. And I haven't been there for a few years, like since before COVID. So I'm very excited. And thank you for being flexible and being willing to listen to this seminar instead of listening to me yammer on. And I suppose you could say that if I'm doing this, then I could just as easily create a whole episode. But in fact, I'm doing that also. You'll see the same shirt in a lot of different recordings. Have a fantastic week, and I look forward to seeing you again in August when I get back from my amazing trip. I'm so glad you're all here. Short-term rentals, I was telling Mike, it's my favorite kind of real estate investing, or I mean, this is kind of my favorite too. I like doing the VHI, but it's a lot of fun, and we're going to get into like why I like it so much in a minute. But and I feel like if you do it right and you like it, it could definitely be a road to riches. So this is just a real quick what we're going to cover today. I mostly have the slides for my own memory, so forgive me if I don't read them to you, because I did this actually for a group, and they're saying like, you're not really following the slides. I'm like, just forget the slides. They're really just for me. So this is basically what we're going to cover: what they are, what makes them different, why you might want to do them, how you start, and then basically what could possibly go wrong. So short-term rentals, like the name says, is everybody familiar with that term, short-term rentals? And if you've used any of these websites, you probably have actually been a client of a short-term rental owner. Basically, it's an investment property that you're going to do. Instead of renting to somebody for a year, you're just going to rent to them for their vacation for short term. You can even do places like Furnished Finders. They specialize in finding housing for nurses that are doing per diem, whatever you call it, when they go to stay with a place. Yeah, like traveling nurses. So they'll stay like 3 or 4 months, which is great if you happen to buy in a condo association that doesn't allow, certain terms. When we'll get into that in a little bit as well. But yeah, certain of these are not just like the weekend. Certain of these are more for a longer term. And this is one of the reasons that I love short-term rentals, because vacationers are a lot more fun than regular renters, right? You obviously want the property to be in great shape, but like if the faucet's dripping, they probably won't even call you. You know what I mean? They're just not gonna. They just don't really care. We're only here for a weekend. If something's wrong, we're not gonna really sweat it. Some of the things that make short-term rentals different are that a lot of the responsibility that you would have as a landlord, right? You want to make sure that your clients are going to pay for things, right? You want to make sure they can pay their rent. You want to make sure that that you get the money. You don't have to worry. So with the short-term rentals, normally the app that you use is going to get the money from them, and then they're going to give it to you. Like Airbnb, they might reserve it 6 months for a time 6 months from now. Airbnb takes their money now, and when they check in, it gives you the money. So you don't have to think about it. You don't have to, like this happened to a friend of mine. He uses VRBO, and apparently they don't do that. So he has a place on the vineyard, and he had collected all this money for the summer, and basically had used it to do things because he has just a very small rental season. So he needed some of that money, and then COVID came, everybody canceled their reservations, and he was like scrambling to pay them back. Airbnb, I didn't have to worry about that. And they allowed people, also Airbnb, and not to be an Airbnb salesperson, but they also gave the landlords 25% of the money that the tenant would have paid, even though they allowed the tenants to cancel. So that was really fantastic, that they went out of their way to try to make things easier for people. So there's less paperwork, less on you as the renter. Like I said, you're not getting applications. You're not worrying about having them sign lead paint disclosures. There's just none of that kind of stuff. But on the flip side, they're not there all the time, right? So that can be a good and a bad. If you're worried about having a reliable income stream, especially the first year, you're not necessarily going to have a reliable income stream because you don't know how often your place is going to be rented. So if you can't weather a storm, as far as, if somebody didn't stay there for example, North Conway is, I feel, a great place for short-term rentals, because I should not hit the microphone. It's a great place for short-term rentals because it's a 3-season place, right? Basically, wintertime, people love to go skiing. Summer is a wonderful place. Fall, flocking there. In the spring, mud season, yeah, that's mud season and black fly season up there. You're not really going to get a lot of people who want to rent during that time. So you might buy in March and not rent it until June and be really bummed out. So that's part of what we're going to talk about afterwards, which is your sort of analysis of what you're going to do. But that's one of the things that makes it different, because you've got more vacancy, but to offset that, you also have higher rents. So in general, just as an example, I helped my boyfriend to buy a property in North Conway, and he has 3 full-time, it's a 4-unit building. 3 of them are full-time, and 1 is just a short-term rental. And he was concerned about it. That's why he only did the 1 unit. And so end of the year was last month, and he looked at his numbers, and he said basically he made 3 times more what he would have made if the long-term people had stayed. And that's the way it can work. And even though he was probably only rented about maybe 48% of the time, you still end up making a lot more, which is cool, which is very cool. And that depends a lot on the property, on what you make, where you buy it. Make sure that it's a place people are going to like, that they're going to want to stay, things like that. But so what's in it for you? Lots of things. Obviously, there's the whole rental income piece. You can expect to make money. You can expect a positive income. Is this? You can't really see that, right? Because I can sit on the other side. Okay. So that's just like with other types of investment property, right? You buy it and you expect to make money on the rent. And the same thing with the resale. You buy it and you expect to make money when you sell it. But the next one, and tax benefits, same thing. You get basically the same tax benefits that you would if you had a full-time rental. But the bottom one is the bonus, because when it's not rented, you get to use it. So I suggest buying one in a place that you like to go. And that's certainly what I've done with my investments is, buy them in a place you like to visit, and then, you become the victim of your own success, and there's never any empty rooms. And you're like, oh, all the times we want to go up, somebody's already up there. But that's okay, because you can always reserve it if you had plans or something, you wanted to use it yourself. So this is a great thing about short-term rentals, is it's not just, especially with Airbnb, it's not necessarily your whole place. Airbnb allows you to rent a bedroom. So if you're a young person just getting started, and maybe your roommate moves out, or maybe you just want to, you live in a 2-bedroom apartment, or you're willing to sleep on the couch and rent your bedroom, you can do that. You don't have to rent the whole house on Airbnb. And I don't think like VRBO, most of those don't do that, but there are other ones. But you can also rent. So yeah, if you have a vacation home already, if you have room in your existing home, some people turn their basement into a suite, or their attic or something, just make a second type of place for people to stay in their own home, or a vacation home you don't use all the time. But there are also places that allow you to rent your pool, just your pool. So let's say, oh, we're not going to be using our pool this weekend. You can put it on this website. I forget what it's called, but I can look it up if anybody wants that. And then just rent your pool for a couple of hours. And I have a podcast episode where I talked to a woman who does that in Colorado, and she made over $10,000 last year just on her pool. And that was just when she wasn't using it.
What's the risk? Like, don't you need a separate insurance plan?
You definitely would let you.
Pool, that would scare the crap out of me. What if someone drowned?
Yeah, and they're also on the website. They're just, they have to sign, paperwork and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me this.
Yeah, and then you can rent. Let's say that you just have a lot of land. People rent they'll set up they'll build a platform, put a tent on it, and you can rent that out.
Like for weddings?
Well, just a small tent. You can just rent it out to campers. It's like you can glamp it up, and make it like that. I took it in New Hampshire. One of my places had a good size, good size. It was probably about 10 by 15, 12 by 15 shed, and I turned that into a tiny house. It had a composting toilet. It didn't have anything fancy, and it was even self-clean because I told people, I'm not going to have a cleaner come just to, sweep this place out. It had no running water. You had to fill up a big 3-gallon jug for water, and we did have a drain into the ground, but that was it. There was no, if you want to shower, you have to do basically a solar shower or whatever. And that place was rented non-stop. It made as much money as the whole house. So we were charging like $75 a night for the whole house and $65 a night for that one, and it was rented all the time because we allowed one night stays, which we didn't in the other one, and I allowed pets. I allowed people to bring their dogs, so it was like non-stop rented. So you never know, right? If you have a shed in your yard, it might be far enough away, it might be okay. And also people rent their campers. So you can really be thinking outside the box if you wanted to get started right away and you didn't have a lot of resources. So let's stop now and let's talk about from what you've heard so far, what do you think about short-term rentals? Do you have like questions or thoughts, or I'd love to hear from the audience.
I think they're wonderful. I have a lot of friends that are doing them. I think the biggest thing, like I have research for clients and even for myself, for my place, I have one of the mill condos in Lowell, is condominium documents. You
Yes.
gotta make sure if it's a condo, you gotta read those very clear.
Yes.
They're starting to put more and more restrictions
It's
on
true
them.
too in different states. Like in Florida, there's a lot of places that don't allow it, even a house.
Yeah, the neighborhood associations for sure. And even like
Certain towns, not even associations.
yeah. And in North Conway there's like a certain block area where you can't do it, but then outside that, so my boyfriend's place is like maybe a block from this area where you can't do short-term rentals. Mm-hmm. I mean, is there a danger that at some point that they would be totally disallowed in the whole town? Sure. And in that case, what's your backup plan? Long-term rental, right? If it's a place people want to go short-term, for sure, you can probably get somebody to stay long-term. So just like with any other property investment, you want to make sure that your credit is good. If you think that at some point you were going to look at buying an investment property, you want to obviously make sure that you start working on your credit right away. Run your credit, look at it, make sure it's good, see if there's any weird stuff on there.
You can actually pull a free credit report at annualcreditreport.com.
Yep.
So you don't have to actually pull it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you wouldn't want to give it to a lender or whatever. At this stage, when you're just working on your credit, you definitely just want to.
I can tell you the negative about buying them is you cannot count any rental income from them to qualify to buy the house.
Right, that's an excellent point. Yep, that's an excellent point.
So you would have to qualify on buying the house on your own without any kind of rental income.
Yep.
Most people can't afford that.
Well, if the good thing is that if you are starting, if it's your first one, you can tell the bank that it's your investment property. I mean, it's your vacation home. So you can say, hey, I'm going to buy a vacation home. So then normally that's like 10% down, and then they're going to, but obviously, yes, you have to be able to afford that because you can't use it because you don't have a lease, right? They're not going to believe that you're going to, But then for the second one, you've got this other one, and now you've got some history. You can show them your tax returns. Oh, look, on this other one. But then they're going to know it's an investment property too. So that's 20% down. So it's great if you can start with your own home or, like your own vacation home, because then financially it's just, gives you an opportunity to kind of get going. Thanks so much for tuning into part 1 of the short-term rental seminar. Can't wait to see you next week for part 2.